What's up, everybody? I'm Stan. Welcome to Detail Comics, where we go over comics in detail. This is iRate Reviews, the show where I go over a comic book, its story, its art, give you my impressions, let you know what it's all about, and whether you should go back to the shop for it or not. So make sure you subscribe in order to get more of these every single week. What I'm going to be talking about is Detective Comics 966. So Detective Comics 966 is the lesser publicized brother of the Oz Effect. So this is really dealing with the story of Tim Drake escaping from the Oz prison that has held him for a lot of the storyline at this point in time, almost half of the entire run of Detective Comics. So let's just dive right into the story. When we open up, we actually see Tim Drake's Batman in the far future. Well, not necessarily far future, but at least 5 to 10 years in the future, where he's taken up the mantle of the Bat, and right now he's in the process of really kind of investigating a variety of different things. He's hunting down Anarchy, who's, doesn't speak fascist, evidently, and as he spits blood into his face after being brutalized, and then we find Tim murdering, well, at least future Tim Batman, murdering him in cold blood, it seems, using the gun that, redeeming the gun that killed Batman's parents, which is kind of crazy on its own right. So as he's kind of headed back, he picks up these files that were on Anarchy. He sees Stephanie Brown, the person that he hasn't seen for so long, the one-time love of his life. And then at that point in time, while he's sitting in the Batcave in New Gotham, after getting chased off by Montoya, he gets grabbed by that same ethereal blue burst that has grabbed so many characters since DC Rebirth and slightly before that. So at that point in time, we then flash forward to where we're at now in the current continuity, and you see Tim Drake running away from Doomsday, who has escaped his prison when he unlocked all the cells. So now we have a conflict where Tim Drake Batman plus Tim Drake Red Robin are running away from Doomsday and trying to kind of counteract this conflict. And then at this point in time, you get some really great splash pages when it comes to everything, but there's a hell of a lot of exposition about what happened to Batman and how long he's been there. Turns out that Tim Drake's Batman has been there for more than a year at this point in time, according to his internal clocks, relative to, the Batsuit that he currently monitors. And then we're talking about, what Tim thinks he is versus what Tim from the future knows that he's going to be, or at least thinks that he knows he's going to be. The morality isn't necessarily as black and white as you once thought it was going to be, Tim. You're not necessarily the person that you thought you were going to be. Who's going to take up the mantle of Batman when everybody else doesn't do it? When Bruce is no longer around, when Bruce is no longer available, who's going to pick it up? Is it going to be Dick Grayson? He takes it over for a little while, but Dick Grayson was always destined to be one thing. He was a circus performer. He was always destined to move on, and that's exactly what he does with the role of Batman. And then Jason Todd, the Red Hood. Who's Jason Todd? Jason Todd is a loner. He's always going down a very different path, and that leads him into a very unfortunate end. And then Damian almost burns down Gotham while, Tim Drake's away hunting for Jason. So that leaves only Tim to take over the mantle, and then ultimately, as they kind of escape through this process, Tim with his quick thinking, he gives out this illusion of Superman so that way Doomsday can chase it away, and then reluctantly he accepts the help of future Tim Drake Batman to bamf out of this, to teleport out of this and into the current timeline and continuity inside DC Rebirth. And at that point in time, he says, one thing that you got to do, you got to go make up with Connor. You don't get that many friends where I'm from, so you can't afford to lose him at this point in time. And Tim's like, who the hell is Connor? And that's at that point in time where we realize that there's this separation. We've got a pre-Flashpoint Tim Drake Batman who still thinks that Connor Kent is Superboy, which was, that was kind of gone a while ago. And Tim Drake doesn't necessarily know who Connor Kent is at this point in time. And he's got the opportunity to change his future. He can change his fate. And the one thing that he needs to do in order to change that fate is to kill Batwoman. And that's where we leave the story. Overall, it sounds like a phenomenal environment for you to be in, but it does a lot. You can really tell that James Tynion, when he's writing this story, is a huge fan of Tim Drake's Red Robin. He is enamored with this boy, because what he does is he brings back a story from 2004-2005 written by Geoff Johns called Titans of Tomorrow, or Titans Tomorrow is what you'd normally find it under, where Tim Drake and the rest of the Teen Titans, including Connor Kent, get transported into 10 years into the future, where they're at Titans Tower in San Francisco. And at that point in time, they realize that Tim Drake's Batman is the fascist leader that he is. He's enacted law, almost martial law, in order to maintain order, or at least the perception of order that he had when he was, the Robin for Batman. And this became a rebellion for that Tim Drake all the way through the rest of his career, at this point in time. And what this does, it shows over and over again that he is still fated for that future at this point in time, unless something drastic happens. So, calling back to that pre-New 52 continuity, and then even kind of ignoring any kind of New 52 era Connor Kent or anything along those lines, showing that there's this misconnection that was really important to that future timeline, shows just how malleable this universe currently is, just how fragile and tampered with the temporal structure has been revealed inside DC Rebirth. So the whole encapsulation of Doomsday Clock and the role of Dr. Manhattan, and how time has kind of been torn and restitched together and folded on itself to kind of make these events of New 52 and DC Rebirth happen, are extremely interesting. And it's probably one of the best parts about the story, is that it brings everything into question. The other thing that really happens is that this is very complemented by Barrows' art. It's, very consistent when we talk about the actual disappearance and death of Tim Drake, Red Robin, in the earlier part of Detective Comics, before we knew that he was transported into Oz's prison. It's just a very good rendition of him, and I mean, the Tim Drake future Batman that he draws is just spot on. Overall, Detective Comics 966 and the issue before it, Detective Comics 965, are must-read issues. If you have any kind of interest in DC Rebirth as an overall storyline, any interest in Oz, or how things have kind of changed, or how things are moving and shifting and molding in terms of the DC continuity and the DC's current timeline, Detective Comics right now, these issues are must-purchase ones. And then we have an entire setup for the arc after that, which is the fall of the Batmen, which is, really encapsulating the Kate Kane storyline and folding that in with what Tynion's doing with Tim Drake right now. So there's all kinds of different stuff that's going to roll out of this, and it's a super exciting time to be reading Detective Comics. So Detective Comics 966, big thumbs up for me. Definitely something you should go back to the shop for. The thing is, I want to know what you guys think about it, so hit me up in the comments down below, and we can start having that conversation. As always, if you like what you see, hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to get more news, reviews, and commentary on comic books, comic book movies, comic book TV shows and games, and anything and everything inside the world of comics.